world. So yes, can you please tell us your father's name?
Yitzchak Velvel Halevi ben Yudel Halevi.
Yitzchak Velvel Halevi ben Yudel Halevi, for sure, is having such aliyot neshama from everything his daughter's doing and his granddaughters are doing and all of his kanai nahar or einaklach are doing. And for sure, it's every day he's ascending and he's getting higher and higher, flying with nachas for what his progeny, and especially Emir Tzashem. Emir Tzashem. Also be for Shlema.
You know, for whoever's like newer to this, Cyril taught both of my daughters in high school, and they got a fabulous education, you know.
She gives me all the credit. They're great girls. She's giving me the credit. Not bad, right?
We tried to follow through a little bit at home on the good days.
On the good days, on the good days. Well, parents always have that. Listen, if today doesn't work, there's always tomorrow. Like, you know, there's always tomorrow. But I'm happy we can do this for your father and for Shlema, for the various people that asked me and that are not doing well. And Lisa, it's so nice you're back again. We appreciate that.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And we're happy to have you. So we are in chapter 16. Now, if we were in person, Sarah would bring popcorn. Sarah makes very fabulous popcorn. That's her trademark.
And liquor, mashka or wine or something.
Absolutely, something to say l'chaim. But we just have to suffice with Torah study now. So that's what we're going to be eating. So what we were discussing, and hopefully today we should finish the chapter perhaps. What we were discussing was this concept called tivuna.
By the way, when I think when you wrote it in the message, you wrote tenuva. You were thinking of a milchik supper from Israel. What? I just wanted to tease you. No one else.
I think you're right. I think you're right, because I just got pasted from last week, and I think last week I did switch the letters. Absolutely.
Listen, Cyril and I go back a long time.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem.
Sorry,
I've been in Chicago a long time, and we go back a long time.
It was funny.
Yes, yes, and I realized that, and I just copy pasted today, so there continued my mistake. So tivuna, as versus tenuva, is when we create a relationship with Hashem, we're creating a relationship with God by the force of our thoughts. We're compelling ourselves. We're getting ourselves to do what we have to do because of a mental push, of a very strong sense of what is right. This is the most appropriate thing. There is nothing more worthwhile than God. And therefore, there's nothing more worthwhile than me to connect to God. And therefore, I am connecting to God. And what we were discussing at the end of last week was how this compares to the wings of love and fear. And the reason we raise this issue is because we know that without love and fear, our commandments, our mitzvot, are earthbound. They don't go anywhere. They're stuck here. Every single thing we do to be elevated, to accomplish, needs the two wings of love and fear to help it ascend. And this person doesn't have love and fear. He has this intellectually created compulsion, which is also pulling in the recesses of his hearts, but it's not really love and fear. So the Rebbe said, as far as we did last week, that the fact is, this still is sort of operating like wings. And why is it still operating like wings? Because just like love and fear naturally bring you to serve. I love God, and therefore I want to give to him. I love God, and therefore I want to be with him. And the only way I'm with God is by serving him. I fear God. I have an awe of God. I have a sense of God's presence. And because of that, I hold back and refrain from all the things I know he does not allow, does not want. I know will be feeding the enemy, be feeding the forces of evil. So my love and fear of God are the wings because they're organic to what I'm doing. They naturally bring me to do the commandment, to study the Torah, to pray, to say the Psalms, to give the charity. My feelings are what is bringing me to these actions. And Tavuna is the same thing. Because I so strongly know this is the right thing and this is what I must do, that awareness is bringing me to do it, bringing me to say certain things, bringing me to think certain things, bringing me to do certain things. So just like love and fear, this is what's causing me to serve God. And therefore, in a sense, it is like wings. It is within the act and elevating the act up to God. So that was as far as we did. And we said that if the person, what's our proof that the Tavuna is bringing you to do all this? Because if you didn't have the Tavuna, you wouldn't do it. Meaning, even though you could say, no, I'm a very good person, I'm a very moral person, or I love to study, I'm a natural learner, but we always will get in the way. Just like we know we struggle, we want to daven, and everything gets in the way. We want to, on Shabbos, suddenly we see all of our laundry we didn't put away. I want to daven, and suddenly the phone's always calling. Like, there's always life that gets in the way. So we have to have, no, I'm going to daven now, and I'm turning the phone off. And if it rings, I'm ignoring it. It has nothing to do with me right now. I am davening. It doesn't exist. If it's important, they'll call back. It's Shabbos, and there's all these messes. I only notice the messes in my house on Shabbos. Guess what? If I'm supposed to clean it, it'll still be there Saturday night for me to clean it. So I have to prioritize, high priority, the Shabbos or the prayers, because otherwise other stuff gets in the way. You want to be busy helping people. You got to take care of this bill. You have to call this company, and you got to deal with this, and you got to deal with this, and you got to deal with it. You can spend your whole life dealing with all the little details. I'm like, what did you do all day? I was busy all day doing what? I don't know, dealing with all these details. We could spend all day, every day dealing with details, or we could prioritize God. So therefore, this person that is dedicating himself to God's service is prioritizing God because of the Tavuna, and he's not letting life get in the way. And therefore, the Rebbe is saying that's a proof that the Tavuna is what's bringing you to do these things. Because if you didn't have the Tavuna, life would get in the way. That's what it does for everyone else. And now, to expound on this concept, the Rebbe is going to connect it to a saying of the sages. And the saying of the sages is, and I'm going to explain the saying of the sages in its normative perspective to know how it's normally used. And then we'll see the Alter Rebbe's innovation on the saying of the sages. So our sages say, Machshava Tova, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mitzarfa Lemaisa, which means a good thought, God joins to a good deed, or God joins to the deed. Now, what does that mean? A good thought, God joins to the deed. What it means is, the normative way we understand this is, let's say you had really good intentions to do something very good, but it just didn't happen. Not like you had this passing thought, oh, this would be a nice day to visit that lonely lady down the block. Oh, well, and then like you got busy with life and it didn't happen. That's not what we mean. We mean like you said, oh, this is a beautiful day to visit her. And you're like, okay, well, when can I go? I can't bring my kids. Oh, here's this precious hour when they're in school, when I could go, and I don't want to come empty-handed. And you make all the arrangements, and you bake her or buy her something nice, and you knock on her door, and she's not home. You did everything from your end, so to speak. It didn't happen. At this point, God says, I consider it as if it happened. You're planning on going somewhere, on going to the shul, on going on Miftzayim, on going to visit the sick, and your car breaks down, and you have no other way of transportation of getting there. You did everything from your end. You're planning on visiting the Jewish patients in the hospital for Purim. They don't let you into the hospital, it's COVID. They let you in and they say there are no Jewish patients. They have no record of who's Jewish or not. Like, again, you did your part, but God just didn't let. At that point, our sages say, a good thought, God joins to the deed, which means he considers it as if you did the deed. And that's a beautiful thing to keep in mind when we have good plans that don't materialize. But the Alter Rebbe here is going to look at this differently. He's not disregarding our sages' normative explanation. That is true. But he's giving another layer of explanation that has to do with our specific situation of Tivuna. So to give that additional layer of explanation, he's going to question the normal one. So we'll start with that. And this is what our sages were hinting to, and they're saying, a good thought God joins to the deed. It should have said, well, if that's what the sages meant, they picked a really weird way to say it. Again, what they're saying is a good thought God joins to a deed. Seemingly what they should have said is a good thought God considers like a deed. I mean, that's what we're saying they mean. So if that's what they mean, why didn't they say it? Why do they say God joins the good thought to the deed? What do you mean? What deed is there to join it to? There was no deed. That's the whole point. It's not like I have good thought and deed, but they're not connected and God puts the pieces together. There is no deed. God's considering the good thought like a deed. So why did they write it that way? So the Alter Rebbe's answer is because beyond the normative explanation that I already gave you, they mean something else. And that something else has to do with Tivuna. The matter is, the reason why our sages said it with this very unique wording, a good thought, God joins to the deed. Because if a person has emotion, they have love, they have fear revealed in their heart, they naturally are engarbed in the action of the mitzvahs, to give them life, so they can fly above to God. Why? Because the heart is as physical as all the rest of the body that's doing the action. It's just more inward. It's the vitality of the body, but it's as corporeal as everything else in your body. And that's why it can be engarbed in them, in the actions, to be the wings to fly above. What the Rebbe is saying here is as follows. When we feel something in our heart, especially if we feel it strongly, that feeling naturally penetrates our entire psyche, our entire body. If you're good at understanding people, as we call it, reading people, and you see someone you know, distance, far from you, and you look at them, you don't have to see their face. You can see their whole body. You can see their back. And you could feel, oh, something really bad happened, or, oh, they're in a really good mood, something really special happened, or, oh, they're in a really bad mood. You see it written all over them. Why? The Rebbe says because the heart is the pump of the body. The heart is as physical as all the rest of the body. So whatever's in the heart naturally spreads to every part of the body. So from our perspective here, in a godly way, we're not talking about in a good mood, in a bad mood, excited, depressed. If a person's feeling a passion for God, if a person's feeling a love and fear of God, their whole body is experiencing that. It's not like, okay, my heart feels a love and fear of God. My whole being feels a love and fear of God. My whole body feels a love and fear of God. So if I'm praying, I'm not praying necessarily with my heart, I'm praying with my lips, I'm praying with my eyes, I'm praying with my vocal cords, but my whole body is feeling this love and fear. So the love and fear is penetrating throughout my prayers. And if I'm cooking for a neighbor who's not feeling well, or in a positive way had a baby, I'm not just cooking. If I'm feeling a joy that I can help someone else, that joy and love to serve and help is within my fingers making the food. It's within the food. You're tasting the food, my joy, my love, my excitement to help this other person. I remember I have a friend who said once that, she told me once, she said she can never eat in restaurants because she says when she eats in restaurants, all she tastes is money. You know, she just tastes the money that was the feeling of the people as they're cooking the food. And when you taste something from home, you're tasting the love. It's there. It's in the food, which is really true. It really is. Because you put yourself into what you do. So therefore, if a person is dressing modestly because of a feeling for God, that feeling for God is throughout her body, that feeling through God penetrates to her clothing, that feeling for God is part of how she's serving God by being in a refined, dignified, godly space in her dress. So the mitzvah, the service, naturally ascends because the wings are within it. It's not only, like we said last week, because I love and fear, therefore I do. It's much deeper. Because I feel love and fear, my body is feeling that love and fear. And therefore my actions are, wait just one second. Sorry for the commercial break. So if I'm feeling that love for God, and that's what's making me realize I want to dress as God wants, my whole body feels that love. And my whole dressing feels that love. So naturally, organic to the commandment, organic to the service is the wings. It's part of it. It's why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. And it's true for every single thing we do. If I'm loving God and fearing God, and therefore choosing to eat what he wants and not eat what he doesn't want, my food choices are within my body that loves God and fears God. And therefore my eating and my kosher naturally has within it the wings, the energy of those emotions, because the emotion naturally spreads. So it's not only the love and fear motivate the mitzvah, motivate the service. The love and fear are naturally within it. It's an organic concept, which is not so for something that's intellectual. If I, in my mind, know this is the right way to behave, and I don't only know it in my mind, I actually do it because I'm an intellectually honest person. And the fact that I know this is right makes me do it. But that awareness is not in what I'm doing. Because there's a big par between the mind and the rest of the body. Meaning we said about the heart that the heart is as corporeal as the body. It's as physical as the body. It's on the exact same level. And therefore, it's very naturally pumping as it pumps the life, as it pumps the oxygen, as it picks up the carbon dioxide, it's pumping the emotions. But what's going on in my brain is not like the rest of my body. The brain is in a physical way, let alone in a spiritual way, far more refined than the rest of the body. So what's in the brain does not naturally extend and spread to the rest of the body. I think we mentioned in this class the concept of like the neck separating the mind from the body. We might have mentioned in this class, I don't remember, because it says that the Jews didn't leave Egypt because Pharaoh didn't let them out. And Pharaoh in the Hebrew, if you take those letters and jumble them in a different combination, a different construction, you get the word oref, which means the back of the neck. So Pharaoh, the neck, is not letting us leave Egypt. Meaning it's constricting us so what's in my mind doesn't reach my body. And for many, many, many people, that's why they know it all, but they can't live it because their thoughts do not compel their actions. They know what's right, they know what's wrong, but that's totally separate from what they actually do. And for other people, special people, their thoughts do compel their actions. And because they know something is right, they do it. And because they know something is wrong, they don't do it. But even those people, the Rebbe says, but the thought is not within the action. It created the action, but it's not within it. Because the thoughts of the mind don't actually spread to the body. So again, we're saying by love and fear, the love and fear are the catalyst. They motivate the action. And the tevuna motivates the action. From that way, they're the same. They both are the motivations of the action, of the good deed, of serving God. But in this way, they're very different. Because the love and fear is naturally, no work on your part. It's totally organic. The love and fear is within whatever you do because it's pumped through the body. The tvuna, the thoughts in your mind, are not pumped through the body. So therefore, we have a problem. What's our problem? My problem is I don't have wings. I said, the Alter Rebbe told me, tvuna could be your wings. Don't worry, you don't have love, you don't have fear, but you have tevuna, and it's just like wings, because wings means it gets you to do it. It's the motivation, and tevuna is your motivation. And if you didn't have the tevuna, you'd be busy paying your bills and, dealing with your taxes and doing lots of other things. You would not be serving God. Tevuna is your motivation. It's your wings. All is fine. And we say, but actually, it's not fine. Because the love and fear not only created in me to do this, the love and fear is within it. And that's why it's the natural wings. The tevuna got me to do it, but it's not within it. The tevuna is in my mind. It's not in my fingers. It's not in my mouth. It's not in my feelings. It's not in any of that stuff. It's just in my mind. It's getting me to do it, which is amazing and remarkable and a big compliment to me and to it. But it's not within it. So how could it be the wings? It's separate. Here comes our saying of our sages. A good thought God joins with a deed. We say can't only mean if you mean to do a good thing but don't do it, God considers it like you did it. Because then the sages should have said a good thought God considers like you did it. But they said a good thought God joins with a deed. It's exactly our situation here. I have a very good thought. It's called tevuna. I have a very good deed. The deed that came because of this good thought. But the two are separate. This is in my mind. This is a product of my body. So God says, I'll take care of it. And he puts the two together. He artificially attaches the tevuna, the good thought, to the action that was the product of the tevuna. So now it too naturally has these wings of tevuna and can ascend. So let's read that. You can hear it as in the words of the Rebbe. And if you have any questions. But if we're not talking about love and fear that are natural to the heart and therefore naturally experienced throughout the body, if we're talking about this intellectual love and fear, meaning it's in your brain and the recesses of your heart where you don't feel it, that is way above action. Your thoughts are so above action that they're not within the action, which is here the problem. So it's impossible for them to be within the action. They're remote from the action. They're detached from the action. They're cerebral. They're all brainy, which is an advantage and a disadvantage. Just like if you think of it in practical terms, it is for most people. I mean, the way I say, you might disagree with me because I'm coming from a certain perspective on this, but in theory, at least, it's easier to reach someone intellectually than emotionally about God. It's easier for someone to intellectually get it than emotionally, because your intellect is your highest, most refined part. If you're having a philosophical discussion, if you're having a theological discussion, you can bring a person to an acceptance and an awareness of God, depending on how many hangups and reasons he has for resisting. But intellectually, there's ground. But that doesn't mean there's an emotional response. Because again, the heart is within the body. It's very physical. And the heart might be we're talking about someone who doesn't have a relationship with God that they're aware of. That person might be very distant from God. So even though you're talking and you're sharing your passion and you're sharing your belief, they could understand you. They could intellectually understand that you're right. But they don't feel it. It doesn't resonate. And therefore, they don't change. It's like you would think if you could prove to someone the truth of a godly life, and you could, there's lots of things you could say in a purely intellectual way to prove how this is the best life to live. how a marriage is better with family purity, how children are healthier, how the Shabbos works, how kosher works, how modesty works, how the prayers work, all these things you could discuss, and you could really bring a person to appreciate the rightness of such a lifestyle. But that doesn't mean they jump on board. Why not? Because when they appreciate the rightness of such a lifestyle, it's all in their mind. And what's in your mind doesn't usually affect you. It doesn't usually transfer to affecting your life. But if someone feels it, if someone feels emotionally this point, the truth of Judaism, the beauty of Judaism, the connection to all of their ancestors through Judaism, they're going to change. For the same reason. It's easier to reach the mind because the mind is aloof from the body. The mind is more refined than the body. The mind is separate than the body. So it's much easier to reach it in terms of spirituality. It's much more spiritual than your body. Your body has very clay feet, and the mind is like searching upward. So searching upward, you can direct toward God, and the mind gets it. But the mind getting it is never generally a success in and of itself. It has to move on. Because if it stays in the mind, it doesn't do anything. But if you can reach the person in their heart, then they change. Why? Because as we're saying, the heart's within the body. So therefore, the heart's a lot harder to reach. But therefore, the heart's much more important to reach. Because when you're in the heart, you're pumping into the whole body that feeling for God, and you start changing. This is the whole premise, in a sense, of Tanya. This work that we're studying we're in chapter 16, it's got 53 chapters. And again,
Mrs. Turn?
Yes, Frima.
Isn't the heart really like, it changes its mind a lot? Like it goes in and out of love. So it's.
And that it could. And that's why what you really want is a partnership between the mind and the heart. The heart, by definition, fluctuates. Frima's right. So you could have this inspiration that comes and goes, and now you're hot, and now you're cold, you're indifferent, you're excited, 100%. But you want to use the mind as a tool to reach the heart. So you need the mind to regulate it, you absolutely do, but you need the heart's passion, because when the heart is engaged, when the heart is on board, then you're going to change. And that's the whole premise of Tanya. The premise of Tanya is get you to feel your love and fear of God. Why? Because then you're going to serve him completely. I want you to be abandoned. I want you to serve God with everything you do, everything you say, everything you think, everything you feel. No problem. All I need to do is get you to really feel how much you love God and fear him. And everything else doesn't happen naturally. So you are right. We can't just rely on emotions in a vacuum because they're very fleeting, very transient, 100%. You want the mind on board to help regulate and maintain the emotions of the heart. But if you have the mind on board and you don't have the emotions of the heart, most people aren't going to change. Because it's just too abstract in the mind to really create change. Yes, I could see why this is the best way to live, but I could also see I'd be a lot healthier if I changed my eating habits. You know, it's like America spends billions of dollars on all these different, weight loss plans. And it's like, I'm not saying for everyone, obviously there's some exceptions, but for the majority of people, it doesn't take that much to understand to make healthy food choices, make your quantities smaller, eat more in the morning, less in the evening, have reasonable exercise. Here, I gave you all the wisdom in the world. I didn't charge you a penny for it. So what are we spending billions of dollars on? Yeah, don't listen to anything I said. Only think about it next week. On Sunday, you could clock your off heights and think about it. But actually, it's interesting. The Rebbe in this year, not Sunday, Monday, because in this is a very unusual way for Purim to fall out. What in Hebrew we call a kvias, how it falls out in the calendar. That Purim is on Friday. Very unusual. During the Rebbe's leadership, it happened a few times. The last time was in 1981. Then it happened in 1994. Then it happened a few times. It's happened since a few times. Pretty rare. And in 1981, the Rebbe wrote a letter. The Rebbe would write letters to world Jewry. So in his letter, he recommended that the people also do Shalach Manos and Matanos Levyainim on Sunday. that, as we know, that's when, because it's very interesting. This is what's called in Jerusalem, Purim Mishulash, like a 3-day Purim. I'm not going into all the technicalities, but it's very, very, very unusual. And so when you have this Purim Mishulash, you have them in Jerusalem, again, it's, wait, Shushan Purim is Shabbos, right, but you can't do things on Shabbos, so it shifts all over the place. You got it Thursday, you got it Friday, you got all different things going on. So just as they will be giving their Shalach Manas and their Matanas Levianim on Sunday, the Rebbe said it's nice for us to join in and participate as well. So therefore, you might still be eating on Sunday. But on Monday, you could think about my wise words, and it didn't cost you a penny. So what's America spending so much money on it for? What don't they know? It's not what they don't know. Knowing for most people doesn't translate into doing. There's a very big par between knowing and doing. There's a very big neck in the middle, obstructing. But when you feel, then it's very natural to do. So that's why, in a godly sense, it's much harder to create godly feelings than to create a godly intellect. It's much easier to understand than to feel for God. Because understanding is remote, understanding is theoretical. In theory, it makes a lot of sense, Judaism. If someone's explaining it well and knows what they're talking about, it makes a lot of sense. So the theory, the intellect, the philosophy, you can understand, but it doesn't translate to action, generally, for most people. But if the intellect can help elicit the feeling, which is much harder to reach because it's so corporeal, it's in your body, then it's automatic. Because when you feel, this is the point the Alter Rebbe is saying, when you feel, that feeling pumps through your body. So your whole body is experiencing that feeling, and therefore your actions are going to match your feeling. Which, of course, is why, as I'm saying in Tanya, we really are trying to feel God. Because the more we have feelings for God, the more we'll act and serve Him perfectly. That's all we will want to do, honestly. And the higher our feelings is, the more that's all we want to do. But here, talking about this person that has a difficulty feeling, the Rebbe is saying, so you created this great thought, and you created an action. Very impressive. Your thought evoked an action. That's pretty impressive, because we just said that most people, their thoughts don't evoke actions. But your thoughts evoked an action. Full check, full stars, full points. That was great work. But wait, we got a problem. Because you have this great thought, you have this action, but they're not meeting, because the thought's staying in your brain, and the action was in your hands when you gave the charity. The action was in your body as you dressed modestly. The action is on your arm as you're putting on the tefillin. It's not within the action, that's great thought. It's totally remote. And that's a big problem. Because we need wings. Oh, I have wings, but the wings are here, and the body of the bird is here. That doesn't work. For the bird to fly, the wings have to be attached to the body. So here comes Hashem's kindness. Here's God's kindness. A good thought, God attaches to the deed. The good thought is Tevuna, and God attaches this to the actions that are a product of Tevuna, but aren't naturally attached, because the thoughts don't naturally flow through the body. And therefore, since this good thought, this Tevuna, is in your brain, which is so remote from your body, it's impossible for them to be engarbed in the action of the mitzvahs, to be the brains, to be the vitality, to be the wings, to elevate them, to fly above. Except God gets involved, and He surgically attaches the good thought to the action to be the wing. So is your Tevuna wings? Yes. Naturally, no. But God does His part, and He takes your good thought and He attaches it to the actions done because of the good thought, so that these mitzvahs have wings. And this is what our sages mean when they say a good thought. Why are they calling Tevuna a good thought? Because that's what it is. It's something in your brain. It's not an emotional love and a fear flaming passionately in your heart. In the understanding of your mind. And as we've said above many times, in the hidden recesses of your heart. So in your heart, there is this latent feeling that you don't feel. And in your mind, there is a very strong awareness that you are very aware of. And God takes that very strong awareness and he joins it to what happened because of that very strong awareness. And that's very important because now it has wings. Now it can fly to God. Any questions on this? You let me talk for a long time. Any questions? Okay, I take that. Hopefully to me it's very clear. And what we see now is a note. The
You
note
did a
is
great
on the
job
side.
explaining it, so I think it's clear.
Thank
We-
you.
We're gonna be able to, see the big split between the heart and the brain over here. So better not to.
Okay, maybe it's a taboo subject, but hopefully it was clear. Intellectually, it's all there. Now we're going to try to get it to our motion. So the Rebbe puts a note here on the side. Now, we're used to footnotes. And the truth is nowadays, people don't even use footnotes. Those are too intimidating for readers. They put like endnotes. So you really aren't going to look at them because they're going to be in the back of the chapter, the back of the book. But the Alter Rebbe writes them on the side notes. And generally, the side notes of the Alter Rebbe are either answering a question a skeptic or someone with a smattering of knowledge of Kabbalah, of esoteric wisdoms would have, a skeptic with a smattering of knowledge of Kabbalah. That's very often the content of the side notes. And sometimes it's just more of a Kabbalistic level of understanding. Because Tanya is not Kabbalah. Kabbalah is a completely different level of God's wisdom. There's the literal understanding, the hints and allusions, the allegorical level, the esoteric level, and Hasidus. Tanya is Hasidus. Kabbalah is the esoteric level. So there's really two completely different levels. But we're using it here to add some of that Kabbalah to bring out some of the concept that Rebbe wants to say here. But it's on the side because it's Kabbalah. If you look on the side, two works of Kabbalah, the Zohar, the primary work of Kabbalah, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Eitz Chaim. The Eitz Chaim is the writings of Reb Chaim Vital recording the teachings of the Arizal. The greatest Kabbalist of all time was Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. The second greatest Kabbalist of all times was the Arizal HaChai, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, and the Arizal never wrote anything down on his own. He said his mind was racing way too fast to put anything on paper. And the student that he sort of spiritually called to him to record his teachings was Reb Chaim Vital. So all of the writings of Reb Chaim Vital, the Eitz Chaim, the pre-Eitz Chaim, are all recording the teachings of the Arizal. So in Zohar, by Rashbi, and in the Eitz Chaim, which means the teachings of the Arizal, the Tvuna Oisius Benu Bas. So this is one of the many times I wish I had a blackboard. I wish you could see this clearly, because first of all, it works much better in the Hebrew than the translation. And without a blackboard, it's hard maybe to visualize if you're not looking inside. The word Tvuna, which is a word we keep using to mean this intellectually created compulsion, motivation, force to serve God completely. If you look at those Hebrew words, you could really break that one word Tvuna down into two words. And the word is ben u bas. If you're not seeing it, you just have to take my word for it. Ben means a son, u bas means and a daughter. So in Kabbalistic sources, the Zohar, the Eitz Chaim, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and the Arizal, they say that within the word Tvuna is embedded, there's a code. There's two words within Tvuna. It takes up all the letters of Tvuna. Ben u bas, the son and the daughter. Now, what are the son and the daughter? Shehein dechilu rachimu. Son and daughter refer to love and fear of God. A son refers to love of God, and a daughter refers to fear of God. Just like a man refers to love of God, and a woman is fear of God. A man is chesed, a woman is gevura. So son and daughter refer to love and fear of God. So embedded within your Tvuna, embedded within the word Tvuna, is son and daughter, is love and fear of God. And he explains, and sometimes the Tvuna descends to be the intellect of Nukva of Zeir Anpin. What does Nukva of Zeir Anpin mean? Zeir Anpin means literally the minor face. Nukva means the feminine element of the minor face, because the minor face is a masculine element. And what those code words are in the world of Kabbalah, Zeir Anpin are the 6 emotions of the world of Atzilus. And Nukva is sovereignty, is the final of the 10 divine attributes of Atzilus, which is Malchus. So again, let me say this again a little slower for people that aren't as familiar with the terms. And for people that are familiar with the terms, you got what I meant, but I'll go over it one more time. There's our physical world. Our physical world has 4 successively higher spiritual counterparts. The highest of the 4 is called Atzilus. So Atzilus is the name for the highest spiritual dimension within our solar system, within our frame of reference. There are much, much higher worlds, much, much higher planes of being, but they're different from our system. Our system is like the final system. So in this final system, we have 4 spiritual worlds and our physical world. The highest of the 4 spiritual worlds is called Atzilus. Atzilus is called Atzilus from the word Eitzel, which means next to, because it's right next to God, it's so high. Or Atzilus is called Atzilus from the word Ne'etzal. Ne'etzal means to just emerge, meaning it's not separate, it's just naturally emerging from God's energy. So Atzilus is the highest world. Within Atzilus and every other spiritual world, there are, in the simplest way of explaining it, 10 divine attributes. There's really, hundreds, but the most basic way of looking at it is 10. And those 10 divide into 3 intellectual usually and 7 emotional. Just as in our soul, we have 5 levels of soul, and in each level we have 3 intellectual powers and 7 emotional. But really they're not 7 emotional. We just a lot of times group them that way. Really there's 6 emotions, because the final 10th attribute by God or by us, in my soul, in my animal soul, in my godly soul, by God, it's not really an emotion. It's a state of being. It's called in the Hebrew Malchus, which in the English we translate as sovereignty, which is a state of being. It's not a feeling for something else. It's a state of being, yourself being a sovereign person. So therefore, we really have 3 intellectual, 6 emotions, and then this final one called Malchus, this state of being called Malchus, which is like the bottom line of it all. So we have the 3 intellectual, that's the intellect, which flows into the 6 emotions, which flows into Malchus, this state of being. And that's the normal order, because normally how God wired himself, which therefore is how we are wired, because we are in his image, is God is saying first there's the intellect, 3 intellectual powers. From the intellect, the energy now goes through emotions, the 6 emotions, which in the world of Atzilus are called Zeir Anpin, the minor face, for other Kabbalistic reasons, but I don't want to get too distracting. And then those 6 emotions flow into the state of being of Malchus, of sovereignty. Intellect, emotion, state of being. We could sort of translate to mean action or acceptance of the yoke of God. In our world, we have the intellect, which is supposed to create and inspire the emotions, which is supposed to lead to the action of serving God, Torah mitzvahs. So I have my 3 intellectual that are supposed to facilitate my 6 emotional. And from the 6 emotions, I come to the bottom line, Malchus, that state of being sovereign, of accepting the yoke of heaven, of serving God completely with Torah mitzvahs. That's normative by God. Intellect, emotion, the state of being sovereign, of being godly, of action, acceptance of the yoke of God. And by me, intellect, emotion, action of Torah mitzvahs. But sometimes things don't work that way. Sometimes it doesn't work as it's supposed to. Intellect, emotion, action. Sometimes we go straight from intellect to action and we circumvent emotion. We have intellect and we have action. We go straight from the Chabad faculties of intellect to Malchus, to the action, to the state of being, to the Torah mitzvahs. And we skip the emotion. But we're saying Kabbalistically, you didn't really skip the emotion. Because Tavuna inside of herself has the letters Ben Ubas. Tavuna has inside of herself son and daughter, love and fear of God. So even when you're going from intellect to action, there is latent, as we've been saying this entire chapter, latent within the Tavuna, an emotional component that's very necessary to allow us to skip the overt emotions, intellect with covert emotions, Ben Ubas, implicit, the son and daughter, to create the action. So what the Rebbe is basically saying here is what we've been saying this whole chapter, but he's now fleshing it out with this Kabbalistic parallel concept, how really, as the Rebbe is saying, within the Tavuna, within the intellect is Ben Ubas, is the son and daughter, is love and fear, though it's covert, and therefore you can go from Tavuna, intellect, within which is covert emotions, and get to the action, as the Rebbe writes. When I say Malchus, Nukva of Zeir Ampin, that sounds very fancy, it means Malchus of the world of Atzilus, action in the human of serving God, of Torah mitzvahs, the Hamaskil Yavin. And if you know Kabbalistic background, you will understand everything the Rebbe just alluded to. So I tried to explain that clearly, knowing the limits of no blackboard and no being able to see it written down. Any questions on any of that? Okay, so now we go back to the body of the text.
I'm sorry.
Ruffle.
Yeah, it says here that it happens sometimes.
Yes.
So why would sometimes it happens this way and sometimes another way through the
You're
emotions?
saying by God or by us?
By us.
It happens this way sometimes by us, as we're understanding in this chapter, because the person doesn't have the ability to have a full emotional response. Next chapter, we're going to actually say this is a great tool for everyone, but we'll wait for for next week to discuss that. But it happens, this world is a parallel to God's reality. We have a 7-day week. Such a weird number, not 5, not 10. We have a 7-day week because God created a 7-day week. He created the world in 7 days. So he created the first primordial week. So we've been following suit. And for some strange reason, we also have a 7-day week. God's the ultimate king. And therefore, our natural way of grouping as a people is with a leader, with some type of authority, with some type of king. We're mirroring him at every level. So therefore, the fact that it works this way by us, that a person that has a problem with revealing his emotions can, through his mind, reach his actions, which we're just explaining really doesn't usually happen. It's like a very big, innovative thought, is because it works that way sometimes by God. Meaning by God, it's intellect, emotions, action. By God, his action is speech, whatever, we didn't get into that. That's what we mean by God's action, but whatever, that's a separate point. Intellect 3, emotion 6, action 1, which is God's sovereignty, the state of being, this acceptance of the authority, the yoke of heaven, speech, that's the hands of God, whatever it's a whole long discussion of stuff what we mean by God's action, but intellect, emotion, action. But sometimes God doesn't work that way. Sometimes God can go straight from intellect to action. And latent within the intellect is an emotion, but it's latent. Because that's true by God, we mirror that, and it could be true by us as well. Meaning, you could almost view it, which is probably true way to view it, that this note is responding to the logical question you could have after learning the body of the text. We just said, and the Alter Rebbe spent relatively a lot of ink emphasizing this point, that intellect does not directly create action. If you have a feeling in your heart, it spreads through your whole body, and therefore it's going to create this response, and within the response is going to be the emotion, because the emotion is spreading through the body. But if it's only in your brain, it doesn't usually work, right? And I spent a long time expounding on that idea that what's in your mind doesn't usually generate a response. So a thinking person could say, wait a minute. So why does Tavuna work? Why does Tavuna work? How is it that I have this thought in my mind? And because of that, I'm more careful on my kosher, and I'm more careful on my Shabbos, and I'm more careful on being a kind person. I'm more careful on my honesty. How did it work? It's from my mind. Minds don't reach body. There's that whole neck in between. So the Alter Rebbe is saying in this side note, it works by you that way, because sometimes it works by God that way as well. Or if you want to look at it slightly different, it works by you that way because really, it's not pure intellect. There is the emotional component. You're just not aware of it, like we see by God. That Tavuna contains within it latently love and fear. And so too by you. You also have love and fear. You're not aware of it. You have a hard time with your emotions, but you also have love and fear latent. And therefore, your intellect containing latently love and fear create the response.
So it depends on the person.
You're saying which person, in this chapter, we're using this technique for people that have a hard time feeling. Yes. This is the Alter Rebbe's solution. And that's why the Alter Rebbe opened up this chapter by saying, it doesn't make a difference which strategy you use. What's important is the bottom line that you're serving God completely. So here I'm speaking to a person who has a hard time with emotion, and he might feel, like a spendthrift, devastated. Like here, I can't really serve God properly because I've been just learning 15 chapters of Tanya. That's all about feeling this passionate love and fear, and I don't even feel anything. So the Alter Rebbe says, fine, you don't feel, no problem. Just get yourself to serve God completely. Yeah, but I'm still not feeling. So this is worthless. No, don't worry about the process. Get to the product. Get to serving God completely. So for this person in this chapter, we're saying, here is an option. It's an option by God, which allows it to be an option by you. It works by God, which enables it to work by you as well. And next chapter, we'll say it's a good tool for all of us. Thank you, Rachel. Any other questions? Okay, so let's get back to the body of the text. So this joining, that God joins that good thought, Tavuna, to the product of Tavuna, whatever mitzvah you did, to elevate the action of the mitzvah, the study of the Torah that was done by this good thought, by Tavuna. Now here the Rebbe is going to say an incredible thing. And this is the final thought of the chapter. So we're going to, I know it's a little late, but we're going to strip it in because I wouldn't want to stick on this next week. Ad Olam Habriya. Until the world of Bria, which is a very high world, it's a world of intellect, which is normally the place, the world. What reaches Bria? Only very special Torah mitzvahs that were done with intellectually created love and fear of God, very high level stuff. That's completely passionately experienced in your heart. But in any case, they would still, even if you didn't have this tefuna that was joined, they would still ascend to the world of Yetzirah through the natural love and fear of God. That's embedded, that's latent in the heart of every Jew. He told us by their birth, by their soul energies. As we'll explain later at length, starting in chapter 18 and later chapters 38, 39, 44. We figured this at length. So the Rebbe threw, again, a lot of information, but very powerful ending to this chapter. So let me give you a little background to understand what the Rebbe is saying here. We said we have our physical world, and then we have 4 spiritual worlds. We have our physical world, and then we have a spiritual world called Asiya, then Yetzirah, then Bria, and then Atzilus. Now, each of these 4 spiritual worlds has a different, what's called Kabbalistically partsuf. Partsuf means a face, a different forte of energy. Atzilus is completely like nullified to God. That's why in Atzilus there's no real angels, there's not too many souls, there's no chambers, there's no Gan Eden. Like it's just godliness, because it's right, so to speak, next to God. So God's very overwhelming. Then we come to the world of Bria, which is the world of intellect. Then we descend to the world of Yetzirah, which is the world of emotion. And then we descend to the world of Asiya, which is the world of action. So on the plane, we would say Bria, intellect, lower than that Yetzira, emotion, and lower than that Asiya, action. So here you are, the Jew on planet Earth doing a mitzvah. And we said your mitzvahs fly. And we said, well, what creates the flight, what creates the ascent is the wings, which is what was the motivation that got you to do this service of God. And the motivation, traditionally, is some type of love. And very broadly, because of course there are many, many, many types of love, but very broadly, we would break the love into two categories. More just natural emotional love, or a higher love that's an intellectually created love. It's not just what you naturally feel because you're Jewish and you have a Jewish heart. You use your mind to think about God, to create a feeling for him. Now that is very, very valued because there's a lot of sweat and toil in that. And it's valued because it has the component of the intellect, which is, again, intellect is considered higher than emotion, intellect and emotion than action. So if a Jew serves God, feeling the natural Jewish love for God, then there's natural wings. Your feeling in your heart extends to your body, extends to what you do. There's natural wings of natural emotional love and fear. And the mitzvah ascends to the world of Yetzirah, the world of emotions, as this is an emotion. If you worked far harder and you did something far superior and you use your mind to create a whole new dimension in your emotional relationship, and you created a love and fear by virtue of your mind, and then with that you did a mitzvah, wow, that mitzvah ascends all the way past Asiya and past Yetzirah, it goes all the way up to Bria, because Bria is the world of intellect. And this is a mitzvah done with intellect, with an emotion created by intellect. Very high level service, an emotion created by intellect. So those are your basic two choices. Either most of your mitzvahs are going to go to the world of Yetzirah, straight emotion, or even higher, wow, the world of Bria, which is intellectually created emotion, because you're using your intellect to create the emotion to serve God. The Rebbe is saying here, and guess what? Your mitzvahs done through Tvuna, even though it's only Tvuna, I don't really feel, I'm a little deficient in that area, I'm not up to par. Hashem needs to surgically attach the Tvuna to my mitzvah for it to be wings. But guess what the Rebbe says? That mitzvah flies all the way to Bria. Why? Bria is that very high world of intellectually created emotion, like very few mitzvahs fly to Bria. My mitzvahs are going to fly to Bria? The Rebbe says yes. Because Bria is the world of intellect. And just like this other person is using his mind to create a love to get the action, you're using your mind to create the action. So your mitzvahs are also completely flavored with intellect. So even though you might think your mitzvahs aren't good enough, and Hashem is just with his kindness making them okay and giving them a pass, no, they actually fly higher than the average mitzvah. Because the average mitzvah hits Yetzirah. Your mitzvahs are going to go all the way to Bria. Because your mitzvahs are done with the sweat and toil of intellect. And they're just as worthy as an intellectually created love and fear mitzvah. So that's a tremendous affirmation for this person, even with all your limitations. And you think, what I'm doing is not as good as this one, it's not as good as this one, this one versus. It's very good. It's going far higher than most mitzvahs. The Rebbe also put another little piece of comfort into what he wrote here, so to speak, sort of adding something that wasn't really so necessary. The Rebbe says, but in any case, if you did the mitzvah without Tvuna, and without intellectually created love and fear, your mitzvah is probably going to go to Yetzirah. Why? Because, and this is a premise of the Alter Rebbe that he repeats and expounds upon at length later in Tanya, because generally speaking, except for the exceptions, when a Jew does a mitzvah, he is loving and fearing God. Meaning we could look at ourselves and say, love, fear, I don't know if I'm loving and fearing, that's pretty big words there. And, I do the mitzvah. I have a charity box and I put out coins and I give charity. Or someone comes to my door and I give them money, I give them a check. or I buy kosher food and I eat kosher. I have my kitchen made kosher and I eat kosher. Like, we can sort of feel now my Judaism is sort of like on automatic pilot. I'm not full of love and fear. I'm doing what you're supposed to do. What I learned, how I was raised, that's my Judaism. Now again, when we get to this concept in the later chapters, starting chapter 38, we will chew this extensively. So I'm not going to give now the whole extensive perspective of the Alter Rebbe. Just, this point the Alter Rebbe is saying here is, Alter Rebbe says no. It says for most of us, most of the time, most of the mitzvahs we do, you really do love and fear God, and that's why you do it. Because if you didn't love and fear God, why would you do it? You're an adult. Nobody's forcing you to make a blessing before you eat or make a blessing after you eat, or to eat this kosher food, or to wait the 6 hours from after meat to milk, or to dress modestly, or to get, who's forcing all of that? Just because of your awareness of God and your relationship to him and your commitment to him. So maybe now today at this moment when you got so much on your plate and you're barely aware that you're making a blessing before you eat or after you eat or after you use the restroom, you're not thinking, I love you, God, so much, and that's why I'm saying this. But when you made the choice as a conscious adult to say those words, to eat in this style, to commit to these actions, you did it because you felt the love of God. You did it because you felt the fear of God. So even now, 20 years later, and you're busy and you're distracted and you're not learning enough to really feel your relationship, you're not aware of how much you truly love and fear God, you still love and fear him. That's still the core nucleus of why you're doing what you're doing. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe says, those mitzvahs also ascend. They also have wings, and they also ascend to the world of Yetzirah, the world of native emotion. So that's a really beautiful reassurance at the end of this chapter for every man out there, that even when we don't feel that we're feeling so much, the Alter Rebbe says, probably you are. And probably your service is coming because in the end, you love God and you fear God, and that's why you're serving him. And therefore, even if you don't really feel it, don't worry. There are wings attached to your mitzvahs, and they are going up to Shemayim. They are going up to heaven. When with that, we finish the chapter. Any questions on this? Okay, I know I held you a little bit over because I was just like, oh, come on, we're not going to just do 10 minutes of this next week. No, we got to finish. Does someone have something beautiful to share or something nice to experience this week that they would like to thank God for?
I'll say something in my,
Sure.
for
And your
my
father.
father's nisham and everything.
Mhm.
So on two different things. Sunday was so powerful that it really blew me away. I mean, my husband was home and we sat at the dining room table, and we put in the money and we said it, and we were like crying together, just wanting so much. And it's going to happen. It has to. Also, I never heard this before, but we always say that the month of Iyar is Ani Hashem Rofecha, but Adar is also because if we sometimes write Hashem's name, we do a dalid with a little line on top, so it's also Ani Hashem Rofecha.
Cute. I never heard that either.
Never heard that?
Nope. Very nice. We will take the refuah. There's lots of people that need that blessing now.
So I really like that, and we just hope for Mashiach, and when Purim comes out the way it does this year, Pesach's not that far behind, and the first Seder is
Motzei
Shabbos.
That's a great kvias, because then you get to actually take a good nap before the Seder.
Then you come rested to the Seder, but you have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning so that you can wash before the time.
But you still get a long nap, so it's still worth it.
You come to the Seder like a mensch.
Yes. Yes. On a regular year, how I organize myself is I put my least work on Erev Pesach. Everything I do, I do a little bit on Erev Pesach, but just really the simanim of the Seder. Everything else I do beforehand. because I really do not want to sit at the Seder and just be so exhausted. I'll be exhausted every other day, but that day I want to do my least work possible. So this is even better. This is no work. This is Shabbos. So this is the best. We should all take wonderful naps, enjoying all the Kedusha of Shabbos we absorbed through sleep, and coincidentally have a good Seder that night.
Amen.
But thank you. You're right. Sunday was unbelievable. Anyone else have something?
Just one more. My
Sure. Yes, let's do something about your father.
My parents grew to really appreciate and to love the Rebbe very much. They were skeptical when I got tangled up in New York. They even came to make sure I wasn't in a cult. And then they met my friends, and they were waiting to see what was going to go wrong, and it didn't. They were like lovely people, and everything was fine. And then I took them to 770, and they really, they saw the power behind the Rebbe. So I was very grateful for that.
Baruch Hashem. That's beautiful that you were able to help them have that relationship.
Oh, Baruch Hashem. So you should have a Elias Nisham. And anybody who's missing anybody, we should all get them back really, really quickly.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely. Do you want to share something else about your father?
Just he, in certain ways, he was very responsible for his family. His father passed away when he was young, and he really took such good care of his mother, my Bubby, who Toby's named for, and for his remaining siblings. There were like a lot of deaths in the family. Brothers passed away, a car crash in World War II and stuff. So he was responsible, but he also he knew how to have fun. And I think he wanted me to be a boy because he used to want to play catch with me and called me Joe. So
My daughter, Joe.
Joe. And he really cared about other people, and whoever they were. I mean, he loved going to different shuls. And when my Bubby passed away in 1962, he, sick or not, whether, he didn't miss a Shachris Mincha or Ma'ariv for my Bubby's neshama. And that was so special. He was, and he actually, we lived in Skokie, but he loved the shuls in West Rogers. He used to like to go to Rabbi Small shul. He used to like to go to the Matala shul, and sometimes I'd go with him. So
That's so beautiful. Wow.
yeah, so that was, yeah, it was really special. But he was a Vilda also, so he was balanced.
Like his daughter.
Yeah. He used to say the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would chase him around, where he grew up, like the Lawndale area, and he would chase them out of the Cheder room, and they would run. And I guess my father needed to run a little bit. It wasn't easy to go from public school to Cheder and have a lot of things that you wanted to do.
Well, Baruch Hashem, he managed to straddle both worlds. He managed to do both.
Yeah, Baruch Hashem. So thank you for letting me remember him.
Sure. We wanted to help. This share should be an aliyah for his neshama. Someone else wants to share something that happened this week that they would like to thank God for?
Well, I can maybe share the story that we've been davening for a young woman who had COVID, she's in Lakewood, and she was pregnant, and her situation was very critical for, I'd say, good 2 weeks. And I'm sure that many of you know that you can only keep people on the ventilator for 10 days. And if they don't respond to the treatment, there's not much that can be done. And she was coming close to day 8, and she was given a new name, and lots and lots of people were davening for her. And she has close connection to Chicago. She's married to someone in Chicago, and she has family, larger family in Chicago, cousins and aunts, and she herself is actually from South Bend, Indiana. And our whole South Bend was having continuous Tehillim, and here in Chicago, and it was a reversal literally on day 9. She had the COVID pneumonia, what we call, and she responded. I don't know exactly to what she responded, but they were able to extubate her. And in fact, this week she went home to her parents to recover, but that's a miracle story, because it really had a grave prognosis, as they now see in pregnant women, unfortunately, the ones who do get COVID. So it is a miracle story. I meant to share it last week, but I couldn't join. So I think it's one of those true miracles that all us who friends of hers and friends of the family are very, very grateful. I can't even imagine how grateful the parents and the husband and the entire mishpacha, but
Your 7 children.
yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was a tragedy, unfortunately, the flip side of that situation on Sunday with someone else. It was a very, very big miracle. Yes, that was a very big miracle. It's like my mother-in-law says, she hears from so many people such bad stuff, and then she hears some good stuff. She's got to hold on to it, got to hold on to both.
Yeah, I know this was very also, again, as I had been informing you, because I know you have a connection to the family, that there were days that everybody was very, very nervous about it. So.
And from both sides. I'm also, Newmark's with my mother-in-law's former neighbor for many years, so I know them as well. Yeah, yeah, I have to thank.
Okay, now you said Newmark. I was now I know who I was davening.
Yeah,
I belong to so many groups that it's.
That's
really,
right. That's right, and it's just sort of happened all of a sudden. You know, when you're given it names for Tehillim, is that you don't always relate. Number one. Number two is not everyone is critical, and here it was just getting from bad to worse every day. It was a very difficult time for me personally. So.
We're very grateful to God for the miracles. We know they're miracles, and we're grateful to God for the miracles. And there's many, many people that should experience those miracles.
Thank you very much. Wonderful class. Thank you.
Thank you
for sharing the lessons and for allowing us to also share.
Thank you. So I'm going to end with the words of the Rebbe in 1992, Shabbat Parshas Tetzaveh. The Rebbe says the main thing is to cry out to God on the very, very lengthy exile on Masai. We cry out until when, to ask and to seek and to do everything possible that immediately should come the complete redemption through Mashiach. Jews, I feel the Rebbe's crying, like it was very emotional. The Rebbe's saying there's a lot of crying. Jews are found in exile for more than 1900 years, and Mashiach still didn't come. We already completed all manners of service. We already did all the activities in all possible manners, including the special joy of Adar. This was a leap year, so it was 60 days, 60 to nullify all negativity. And we don't know what else we can do. And nevertheless, another week should go by, another day should go by, another minute should go by, and we don't see this, the redemption actuality. So I agree with Sarah. I think what happened Sunday was an enormous spiritual catalyst to just shift the world. Just like Dina was saying with Tehillim, when we say Psalms, hey, you don't know you're saying for, you say, someone's sick, you say with more intensity, less intensity, and we don't know what we're doing, but we're doing so much. So for those like Sarah that really felt it Sunday morning, and for those that just did it, it's just so unbelievable spiritually what that accomplished. And we should just see the end. You know, we're coming to Purim, Thursday night, Friday. And for those that would like, keep celebrating on Sunday. And we're coming to a time when God opens up the channels of miracles. So we should see it. We should see the personal miracles. We should pray for the personal miracles. When you hear the blessings on the Megillah, that's a time that you could turn to God and pray for those miracles. It's auspicious on Thursday to say chapter 22 of Tehillim. Some people say it once, some say it 7 times, and to pray for the miracles you're asking for, because Purim is a time of miracles. And we should primarily see the miracle that is the ultimate miracle that resolves all the issues. That's the only real answer. And we should see the complete revelation of Mashiach now. Thank you so much for joining. So next week we want to be doing this in Yerushalayim. I'm sure we'll still have Zoom abilities there. Be well.
Amen, amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I'm
Thanks
not
so
buying
much.
my
Thank you.
Shepsula, it depends if I buy or have to play with my